Hey everybody, it's Alex once again with the Remote Work Live podcast. And today I'm here with somebody I've been looking forward to talking to for a long time. When I say a long time, it has to be at least a couple of years. And it's on me. It's probably on me, but I'm so glad to have Tyler Sellhorn with me today. Tyler, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining me here today.
Alex, it's been in the works for, gosh, I'd say since 2019. I think, we definitely count ourselves amongst the weirdos that were about that remote life back in the day before the pandemic. And yeah, I think I was somebody who, I'm guilty here just to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Tyler Sellhorn, a full-on internet person on the internet doing internet things, including host of the remote show from We Work Remotely, proprietor of head of remote.xyz, and customer success, head of remote, all of the things out here for remote operations teams that are looking to be excellent in the remote workspace. We've been trying to connect for a while. I was aspirationally wanting to be a podcaster, and then I started podcasting myself, and then now we're here having an opportunity to learn out loud together. It's really my pleasure and privilege to be learning out loud with you here today, Alex.
Pleasure's mine as well, Tyler, because like you've said, it's been pre 2020, probably like you said, 2019, since I've been having a conversation with you about being on the podcast. And yeah, a lot's passed since that, a lot has gone on since then. But yeah, you like you said, you're a podcaster yourself. You're a remote operations leader as well, head of remote in various remote roles that you've had. You're also a father as well, yeah, and that's something I want to talk with you about
Oh,
today because
yeah,
that's something that we
yeah,
obviously have in
definitely,
common.
Alex. I think for me, the thing that remote working invites all of us to do is to step back and consider and reflect. And there was this moment in time during the pandemic when there was the great resignation. And I think really what was happening there is that everyone was doing that stepping back that we just mentioned. Is that, okay, who am I? Am I really this like professional person that takes a commute and physically moves their person to another place to work from every day? Like, is that how I want to be spending my time? And I think everyone found out, no, I do not want to commute. I do not want to make my life to be a driver, right? Instead, we kind of like reevaluated that identity stack is the phrase that I've started using. And who am I, right? Long before I'm a professional, I am a spouse. I am a parent. I am a youth sports coach. I'm a friend. I'm a faith community member. I'm a remote working advocate, all before I'm a professional. That's not to say that there's like this large gulf between those things and being a professional. Like, I'm trying to pay the bills here, same as anybody else is, right? But the big thing is that who I am before I'm a professional, right, is the thing that my success as a professional finds its roots, right? I take lessons that I have learned from, okay, so I'm talking to you in my home office. There's like lots of this paraphernalia all around me, very much so in the Zoom background stuff, right? Like, I am somebody who loves to sail and is about the water, right? And so like lots of metaphors and analogies and like lessons that I've learned in those other places, I've brought with me to who I am as a remote leader. I'm also a team sports person, right? And so lots of those lessons that like very often we say, sports doesn't build character, it reveals character, right? And I think that's one of those things that, like, for myself, all those little cones and cliches that apply in those other places, like, turns out that they're very true inside of the remote working, remote leader space, just workspace. I mean, there's a reason why very often psychologists or leaders in the sporting field come to speak to conferences or to companies to say, hey, we're going to have a sales kickoff and let's bring the motivational speaker. Well, who are we going to talk to? How about, well, here in Northern Indiana, where I'm from, a huge name is Notre Dame football. Like, why is Notre Dame football special? Well, because they win, not because they've done anything unique or different than what other companies do. But by golly, those head coaches come and speak to companies. Why are we choosing that? Well, because we want to take the lessons they've learned from those other places and apply them in our own spaces. And I think that's one of the things that I think is really, really neat about that consideration and reflection space, is to say, okay, who am I, right? And how does that apply, and how does that become more inside of the organizations that I'm serving?
Love that. And it's basically what you've described there is the bedrock of who you are as a person, which, and I think something I've noticed about all the conversations I've had with you online and other remote influencers as well, is that they have an innate innate ability to reflect, understand exactly who they are, the core of who they are, in the way that you've just described, and then translate that into their professional life, build a professional life around that core. What I'm also intrigued to know, because I know obviously of you as a remote influencer, remote advocate. And by the way, you mentioned the sailing part. Is that where the air horns bit comes? The air horns
Well,
comes from?
so yes, I definitely have invested some time in the quote unquote personal branding side of like being an internet person. But yeah, like for me, I'm just wanting to associate enthusiasm and sound and the experience of celebration and joy with my name, right? My last name is Sellhorn, and so of course, choosing air horns, to drop those here in this moment, it's really exciting to be with others that have similar ideas and similar thoughts and values to how they show up in the world. And so for me, anytime that someone has gotten a new job, right, or someone was honored, right, what better way to recognize them is to join in and celebrate who they are with something audible. So very often here in the internet, it's very screen based, text based, right? How do we insert some of that sound and some of that joy that comes from being present with one another? Well, I hope that, like you've heard me say the air horns enough times, that you think of me, or you think
Yes, I
of
do.
that sound to be, oh yeah, but let's put some reggaeton music on, and let's dance together, and let's celebrate and have some joy. Obviously I'm here in the Western Hemisphere, and there's lots of like club music styles that include that sound. So it's very, very, it's a lot of fun to drop that in places where it belongs. And so, yes, sailing definitely has its own horns, right? There's lots of sounds that are associated with sailing, but I grew up on the North American Great Lakes. I'm from Michigan originally, and my grandparents were fortunate enough to be able to retire early when they sold the recreational vehicle dealership that they owned to their largest competitor, and they bought a live-aboard sailboat. And so that was summer vacations for me growing up, was right there in Montague, Michigan, on the coast of Lake Michigan. And so spent a lot of time sailing there. And so that was where I started making those analogies to remote working. For me, a lot of understanding was unlocked by making the jump from, okay, asynchronous communication. Oh yeah, well, like naval commanders were the very first kind of practitioners of that sort of vibe, right? Where it's to say, okay, I'm going to have written orders that I carry around in my shirt, right? To be able to say, okay, this is what we are to do, and it's broad enough that like I'm being delegated authority and responsibility to be able to go and accomplish this mission, right? I'm being invested with the power of God by the king to operate this vessel as if it were a tiny slice of England, right? If we're going to imagine, the Great Britain, and those days of yore where They're going to that was written into the Articles of War, where the responsibilities of naval captains to act in delegation from the royal authority.
Right.
And so I think that sort of mental model really helped me figure out how to become a successful remote leader, was to think of myself as one of those naval captains, right? Who's responsible for these other people, for their safety, and that like the happiest ships are ones in which individuals are also delegated that authority and responsibility in their own spaces of the ship, right? And there's also, like, you could turn that around and turn it into an abusive relationship too. Like there's the negative side. There's mutinies that happen on the high seas as well. So you got to be, recognition of like how to operate in a way that actually honors the autonomy and agency of individuals, right? And especially when we're far away from home, right? Or we're not near one another or nearest the ultimate authority.
And for you, Tyler, I mean, like I said, you're an influencer in the world of remote work now. I was on another episode the other day speaking to, I can't remember who it was, but I was talking about my first encounters with remote work, because I started out in the office. I started out in the days of the open planned office space, and everybody on the office floor, everybody's shouting here, there, and everywhere. And my first encounters with remote work, even though I didn't realize it at the time, was when I was watching my my godfather basically working from home while I was getting ready to go out into the office. And I didn't really think about it from a remote work aspect. I just thought, how great would it be for me to be able to work, as I want to work, sit at my desk as I want to work, run my own desk, run my own time. And that was my real first encounter. But it wasn't for another few years that I really began to understand the importance of that. For you, where's the origins of remote work for you?
So I am a career pivoter, right? Once upon a time, I was a unionized government employee as a secondary mathematics teacher, right? So, in a previous career, I was a technology-oriented teacher, and I made the switch to become a teaching-oriented technologist. I got a job in customer success, and the thing that really prompted this shift in careers for me was that I was kind of bumping up against the ceiling of like where I could progress in my career and education. And I said, okay, I'm going to stop asking those people for permission to do the next thing. And as soon as I decoupled my vocation from my location, it has been up and to the right for me professionally. And so, like, just to kind of really zoom in on that moment of decision, right? I talked about like who I am as a person, and like why did I choose to become a school teacher in the first place? Because it really allowed me to optimize my life for those other identities that I described, right? I wanted to be a parent, I wanted to be a spouse, I wanted to be a youth sports coach. These are all things that I wanted to do, like no matter my profession. And so I chose to be a school teacher because that was serving those other identities. And what remote work enabled for me was the opportunity to do all kinds of other things because of the increased flexibility, because of the asynchronous nature of many parts of my work. I could start working a nonlinear workday, right? I could begin my day at 5 a.m. and meet with people that were east of where I was, right? I could spend, time cooking breakfast for my children and seeing them off to school, right? I could pick them up from school every day, right? And talk to them at a moment in time where they're kind of in that transition, instead of like just catching up, like, while we're sort of kind of having a bite to eat together before they're off to their evening activities. It's much more so like a work-life integration instead of a work-life balance. And that was the thing that really, really gave me the license to go all in with this idea of remote working. Like, why did I not just get a remote job, but also become a remote working advocate, become a podcaster, like talking to you right now? It's because I believe in this at a fundamental level as a transformational shift in the way the world works and can unlock so many opportunities for the world to become better as we increase access to better jobs in all kinds of places. I'm speaking to you from the 79th ranked metropolitan area in the United States. I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, right? Jobs like the ones that I've been able to work do not exist within 30 minutes of my house, 30 miles of my house, right? I live 3.5 hours from Chicago, 2 hours from Indianapolis. This is the education and healthcare hub of a really large rural area. There's some like back office development type jobs in the tech space, but like I'm somebody who loves computers and like has figured out how to teach other people how to use them well. Okay, well, how do you get a job? Well, you're going to have to work remotely unless you're willing to move. And I'm not willing to move. We've raised our family near family. This is like long before the United States decided to build a fort here. There was people residing here because it was a strategic location in the United States. And there's people been living here for ages. And I want to be able to live wherever I want to live, not just for the 79th metro in the United States, but beyond the United States. Those opportunities should be available to people that don't look like me, right? You may not be able to see me here on a podcast. This is a very visual podcast, of course. No. I'm a white dude from the Midwestern United States, right? So like I have lots of opportunity if I'm willing to just kind of like go to an office, right? But I want to make this possible for people that don't look like me. I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to teach inside of classrooms that are very cross-cultural and people that don't look like me. I want to see those students thrive and succeed and be able to build lives that are built on their own decision-making instead of corporate HR.
Right. And so you've made the conscious decision. I think for me it was a bit more gradual by the sounds of the things. My transition into remote was gradual. It became more, I put more initiative towards it when I became a father myself. And like you, I saw the benefits. It's not even, I don't like using that word benefits because as fathers, we should be able to be there for our children, shouldn't we? It shouldn't be like
it's fundamental. It's fundamental.
Yeah.
It was net, being, actually working at a school was really hard for me, right? It was bells, right? You think about the most synchronous kind of working environment possible, bells to start and end a mandatory meeting with a bunch of people you like 30 plus people in a mandatory meeting with people you did not select to be with, right? There's a certain amount of trauma that I laid off as I transitioned away from that working style. And I think you're right on to say, how are we going to optimize our lives for all of our identities and not primarily or even only our professional lives? And that's not to say that like people who want to prioritize their professional selves like further up the stack, right? Like you don't have to do it like me, right? I've been very successful as a professional. It's not that like I don't prioritize that as a part of like my working day. Like I build in a lot of time to be successful and contribute to the bottom line of the businesses that I serve, right? But there's going to be others that are going to, there might be opportunity for them to have a really, really outsized, return on their investment of time, and they might choose to put professional at the very top of their list. Well, if we invite CEOs and founders to say, okay, I really am going to make my primary identity, like over and above everything else, who I am as a professional, your life will become better if you choose to work remotely, because now you are not tethered to a central office hub, right? In fact, very often CEOs have this thinking of the before times, right? When we were, most companies had a central office. You might have had a central office that you were there 1 week out of 4 in a month, right? And maybe not even the entire week. CEOs and executive C-level people, right? They were very often like living a distributed working life with an assistant who organized their single source of truth and like help their calendar be organized. What we're inviting everyone to do is to like optimize their lives in that very same way. We talk about managers of one, right, as being very successful remote workers. Well, guess what? That's what CEOs have been for themselves. They've managed themselves. Right? Okay, well, we need to invite each person to be the CEO of their lives, right, including their professional lives. And that's what we have to be able to optimize for and allow people to become fully invested in all their different identities, including their professional ones.
And because you've been able to transition and you've been able to, like you said, build a career around, obviously what you're good at, but also around your life. And this is something that people don't. Building a career if you're working in the office is not an easy thing. Building a remote career is probably even more demanding for some because people are still trying to discover what remote work really is, and people probably don't. I suppose the wider public, I suppose, I don't know what to say here, but people don't really understand the actual breadth of different opportunity that is available where remote work is concerned. But you're navigating that, it seems, with ease, I would say. I mean, how are you doing that, Tyler? And what would you recommend in terms of building a career where remote work is concerned?
Well, I think the thing that I want to encourage job seekers with is that it used to be very much so that like you were among a very select few people in a geographic area that were available to a specific company that where you live near, or that you were willing to move to, right? And so now, like in a remote world, the who you're competing against is many more people that have similar skills to you, right? And so the thing that needs to be done is to say, okay, I don't want to like try to fit myself into the average like person, right? I'm not gonna be this like nameless, faceless cog in the machine, right? That kind of style only works for somebody who has the all the letters after their name and the credentials, and like you're the shiniest cog in the bin, right? And so what each of us is being invited to do now that we have decoupled our vocations and locations, right, is to say, okay, what are the dimensions of my job search, right? What kinds of functions, which kinds of companies, what kinds of experiences do I already have that make me unique, that make me special, right? And so for me, right, as I think about myself, right, how do I demonstrate myself as the top one for a role, right? Sometimes that's going to be to be in business for yourself. Other times that's going to be to pitch a role to a company, which companies are interested in the kinds of people that I am, right? And so it becomes this kind of barbellification that has happened in so many industries, right, and markets. Now that the job market is internet enabled, right, there's going to be those that wide bottom that like anybody could do, right? And then there's going to be that other end that's very specific for you. So job seekers, right, take the time to identify if I were just to be like nameless, faceless, whomever, I'm going to apply to anything that I'm just kind of adjacent to. And it's a numbers game, right? It's on the recruiters to sort out who's the best in that. And I don't need 10 jobs. I don't need 2 jobs. I need 1 job, right? So I'm going to apply to all the things, and hopefully one of those works out for me. At the same time, you can be running this side process that's who am I very, very specifically suited for, right? You can run those things in parallel. You can say, okay, I have this, and that. And that means that I need to go on a cold inbound or find somebody that knows this person to introduce me to them. Because if I get a chance to talk to them, if I'm in front of them, it will automatically click because of who I already am to this company, right? They just haven't met me yet. So that's why they haven't hired me, is because they haven't met me yet. So there's going to be those two sort of buckets. There's going to be that like, I just need a job space, right? And so I'm going to keep applying to anything that's adjacent to me with an adaptable cover letter, adaptable, CV, right? That says, okay, shove the keywords to get past the robot bouncers of the applicant tracking system, right? And then there's the other part where you're getting yourself past the bouncers yourself, right? Where you're saying, okay, I know this person who knows that person, and I can kind of get into the company that way. And I know I'm really excited about what they're doing, and it doesn't even matter what job I get with that company. They'll find a spot for me because of who I am.
Right, love that. And I think that's probably what, I interact with job seekers all the time, and I think there is still, in fact, because networking used to be the way that people got jobs, talking to somebody who they know or somebody who knew somebody who they knew, you know what I mean? So they had people within their network and they would get jobs, and this is like even pre-internet, or even, the early days of the internet, people were still getting jobs in that way. And I still speak to people who, are doing the spray and pray approach, where they're just firing things off, or they're doing the very generalist approach, and then they're not focusing on, as you described it, the art of actually speaking with people within a company that you're aligned with. You don't really, you don't mind what the role is, but you love that company so much that you want to. So there's still that idea that people are still applying quite heavily online. But I get the feeling, and I probably know the answer to this already, but I get the feeling that you tend to, because your network is quite broad, that you're speaking to a lot of people, you understand how the whole process works. And I get the feeling that you're doing a lot of conversations that enable you to move from one role to another, from one opportunity to the next. Is that the case for you?
Well, I would say that no one is in charge of your career except for you.
Right.
It's on you to make that happen for yourself. There is no company, there is no person, or we are all the same and we are all different, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do you differentiate yourself in a way that is attractive to an employer, right? There's kind of like this side conversation that we haven't yet spoken about, is that being in business for yourself enables a remote working life that has even more freedom than what we've described, right? And I think there's kind of something to be inviting people into, is as they think about a job search, right? The question might be is, are the skills that I have attractive to an agency? Are the skills that I have attractive enough to just start working some contract jobs? Am I maybe not even interested in having, being in a team? I just really want to be able to optimize for the freedom of movement, and ignoring corporate mobility problems, right? There's a reason why that's a whole industry, right? Because jurisdictions want you to pay taxes in the places that you are. So okay, how about I just take on that for myself and not let the employer be the one that's in charge of that. If that's you need to really, really consider how to make yourself marketable in a freelancer marketplace, or having a great landing page of your own to be able to say, okay, these are the things that I'm good at. Do you need that, right? And sell yourself and your skills in that way. And that's kind of scary for some people. Okay, well then maybe that sort of lifestyle isn't for you. Okay, well then now let's come back to the part where we're saying, okay, what are the things that are specific to me, and who are the companies that need that kind of a person? You go it's not a worthiness problem anymore. Once we have decoupled our vocations from our locations, it is no longer a worthiness problem. It is a matchmaking problem. There are opportunities, there is talent. How do we get them to match up? It is not a situation where there isn't enough jobs for the people that are looking for jobs. It's making sure that the companies that need those people find those people, whether they're freelancing or whether they're being employed directly by the company. And now, we've got all these EOR, PEO, tech-enabled like layers on top of the jurisdiction of governments. Well, by golly, it doesn't really matter where you are, so long as the company has employed one, is a vendor using one of those as a vendor. You don't have to be in a specific location. You just need to have found your spot. And I think partly some people don't believe it's there for them, right? And I'm here to tell you that you are the top one for some company, right? So long as you're willing to say, okay, I'm going to go find it, right? And they're willing to go say, I'm going to go find them.
Love that. Love that. And when you think about where you are as a leader, and you think about it as, I guess, the steps on a staircase, how far are you up that staircase?
So I've been successful as a director so far, and I think that one of the things that I'm really good at is doing the managing of managers and helping them to become the best they can be for their teams, right? And having skip levels with those individual contributors as well. I've led teams that spanned from Seattle to Melbourne, right? I've also led teams that were very small, right? And just a few of us. And I think it's one of those things where we need to recognize that remote working exposes a truth that was always true. No one is in charge of anyone else. Each of us is in charge of ourselves. And what we need to do as leaders is to become influential. We need to become people that invite the contributions of the people that we lead, right? We need to, instead of expressing power over others, we need to be expressing power to, power with, and power within the teams that we lead, right? And we need to be inviting people to come further up and further into the organization and helping them to see the contributions that they can make to the collective, right? And if we can't do that, maybe we don't deserve the contributions of those people. There's no holding on to power and grasping it so tightly that we make it shrink is no way to build a business in 2023. What we need to do instead is to imagine, okay, I'm going to hold on to my candle and I'm going to light the candle of all the others that I come in contact with. And my light didn't diminish, but by golly, we together have a light that can light up a whole room if we're willing to share that energy, that fire with others. And it's not easy to motivate people. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to show them the opportunity to be able to express autonomy and learn mastery and find purpose in the organization that you're leading. Obviously there's a paycheck that ought to motivate us some, but there's a paycheck anywhere, right? It's no longer kind of like stuck with the jobs that are here in this town. No, there's opportunity wherever they want to find it. In fact, they can just go work for themselves. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to behave? We have to make the decision to say, okay, you are empowered to manage your own space, manage your own office, manage your own time, where you're going to work from. What I'm going to do is going to give you the environment in which you can flourish and grow. I'm going to make sure that there's safety and there's discomfort, right? The only place that the tree is going to grow is where it is able to find roots, right? And have the right amount of heat and sunlight and good soil, right? It's our job as leaders to build in that space that, okay, well, we don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want anybody to just be a seed on the path that can't have an opportunity to grow. We want to build the environment in which they're going to be prompted to spread out their limbs and start building their own space and sharing their resources with others. How do we do that? Well, we have to invite them to start, right? We have to place them in the ground that is already prepared for them to flourish and grow.
Love it. Love this. And yes, you're a leader, not just in the remote workspace, but your role now with We Work Remotely, it's very much a leadership role. How is that all going? Tell me a bit about what you're doing with We Work Remotely. I know you're on the podcast, but I just want to know a bit more about that.
Yeah. So, for myself, when I think about what I am trying to accomplish with the podcast, is that I want to invite people who have already figured something out to connect the dots of how they came to understand something. Because the listener might also be an advanced practitioner of remote first practices, but I'm really optimizing for that person who's just learning, like I was, right? So when I made the career transition, I jumped into the deep end and do all the feeds, right? Every podcast I could get to, Alex's podcast, Lisette Sutherland's podcast, and Matt Hollingsworth's podcast at We Work Remotely. And I noticed, hey, that used to be a weekly podcast, and then it was a monthly podcast, and then it was like a sometimes monthly podcast. And I said, hey, I'm going to pitch them. I recorded my voice. Right? I'd already purchased the equipment and said to myself, okay, let's manifest this opportunity, right? And very fortunately, Matt was, thank you, Matt, for going on to greener pastures. He was getting ready to do something else, and I got to have a trial as a guest, and then it was handed off to me. And so we've recorded, I guess, like 55 more episodes past the 30 or so that we had already been recorded. Very grateful for Kevin Kirkpatrick and Justine Camacho, who are keeping the lights on over there at We Work Remotely. But it's been my sincere pleasure to be, really the biggest thing that I wanted to be able to do was to just hang out with my heroes, right? I wanted to invite people like Darren Murph onto the podcast. I wanted to be able to invite people like Laurel Farrar, Chris Hurd, right? I wanted to be able to just have a conversation with those people. Well, by golly, maybe it's not remote work for you, but there's probably some way for you to have an opportunity to interact with those people online. Podcasting, I think, is a really great one because very often you get to do the at least screen to screen conversation, right? But no one is gatekeeping you from connecting with the people that you admire, right? What's the phrase from we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time around.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Okay. Well, I wanted to spend my time around those folks, right? In terms of like when I'm in working, like there's obviously the people that are at my company that I'm working with, right? But when I'm thinking of my own time and how I'm going to spend my own time, I'm going to listen to their podcast. Basically anytime those people sneezed on the internet, I was standing shoulder to shoulder with them, handing them a handkerchief, right? And like, how did I become their peer? Just by showing up in the virtual spaces that they already were in. And so like that's what I think is happening, right? And I'm just one guy, right? But no one is permissioning you. You don't need anyone's permission to do the next thing. Everyone has the same opportunity that I did to be able to go and meet and interact with the people that you want to become like. That's the power of the internet, right? You can go find the niche, right? That's yours, right? And by golly, I'll tell you what, I've met some of those people that I met on the internet in person, right? That URL to IRL pipeline is a real one. Like those are some hugs. I tell you what, folks that you find, in the long tail of the internet, they are the people that you are most like, right?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think I love the part where you were talking about essentially using the internet as a vehicle to connect with people from anywhere around the world. And I think, like you said, you don't need permission to do that. And that's, in fact, the Remote Work Life podcast, the origins of the Remote Work Life podcast, was that I wanted to connect with you. I wanted to connect with Nick Francis. I wanted to connect with Chris Hurd, all those people that you mentioned, Laurel. I wanted to just speak to them and find out about them but I wanted to try to give them value as well. I didn't want to just sort of use their time. I wanted to do it in a way that was hopefully beneficial to them as well. And it was a big leap for me actually to get the courage to do that. But at the same time, it was, even now the conversation I'm having with you, it's just warming me up. It's just kind of, it just gets you going. It fuels you, those conversations. And I think, yeah, there's lots of similarities between myself and you where that's concerned. And you're doing a great job, by the way, with We Work Remotely. I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I would definitely say that I patterned myself after what you were up to, right? Like, in terms of, trying to be someone who is, like, there's no, like, agenda here, right? I'm interested in the things you're interested in. Let's talk about them, right? And let's make friends.
Yep. And if Chris Hurd's listening, I've been trying to get him on the podcast for a little while. He's not returning my emails.
Well, I tell you what, I would definitely say that there was a moment in time where some of those people were less in demand, right? There's a reason why like remote has become a hot phrase, and maybe there will be a moment here in the trough of disillusionment as we're in just to timestamp things a little bit, where there's a lot of like negative headlines about return to office. At least we won that battle. Like, there was a time when it was return to work, right? And we've gotten people to say return to office, because work does not have a place. It is anywhere you choose to be productive.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, I'm sure Chris is very busy. I'm not in any way sort of denigrating him at all. Chris, as I said, if you are listening, please, I would love to have you on. But no, it's like, but I still feel there's still like there's still an agenda. I mean, I don't know if it is an agenda or if it's just clickbait about the whole idea of remote work and work, the fact that if you're working remotely, you're working from home, you're stuck in a corner and you don't ever come out your house, you hardly ever speak to anybody, you're an introvert. I mean, okay, there's lots of introverts that work remotely, but it's just still, like you said, there's a battle that's been won, but there's still a long way to go where that's concerned.
I'm going to say, like, bye to anybody that thinks that office-based work is going to be the primary mode, right? Stop making it an either or, right? It is a spectrum. It is both and. There's trade-offs all the way down, right? There's going to be some organizations that work remotely from one metro area, right? And they'll be able to meet up whenever they choose to, right? There's going to be some organizations that have hubs globally in a few different places, and they're going to always come to the office, but they're going to start operating from a remote first principles, saying that we're going to travel the sun, and our work is in the cloud just as much as a remote first place. But you know what? We're going to, for our business, it makes sense for everybody to come to the office all the time. Okay, like that's no skin off my back for you to choose to work that way. It's not for me, right? But it is for somebody, and that's what I mean when I say somebody is the top one for some company, right? Because there's going to be only some subset of people that can work at that kind of company, right? And others are going to be the other way. So, to me, we need to stop treating things as binary and like one way or this way. And no, that is the thing that is been forced upon us by the pandemic and the experience of working remotely, like by everyone, is to say, you know what? I'm going to pick my spot on this spectrum that works for me, right? And my company, if I'm a leader, right? And so keep iterating, keep finding what works best for you. And it might not be the version that I'm about, right? And that's okay. Like, I'm not here to like talk you into something that isn't working, right? Mm-hmm. I'm saying, no, please do find what's working and do it well.
Absolutely. And what excites you about the future, Tyler? What's exciting for you about the future?
The thing that I'm most excited about is for this realization for those remote first companies that used to, or the companies that had been office based and then shifted to a primarily remote way of working, or they're in some sort of hybrid setup where Maybe they haven't been able to get out of their lease yet, right? But when those funds that used to be associated with a facility, right, start getting redirected towards the best ways of working in a virtual first kind of company, that's the moment that I'm really excited for, is for those COOs that like are looking at real estate as the most expendable kind of like part of the budget, right? And say, okay, you know what, we'd like to save all the money and just not have this office anymore. But you know what we're going to do? Instead of saying, okay, we're going to spend 3% of that budget on like our digital workplace, we're going to spend like 30% of that budget on our remote workplace. Because right now, companies that have gone remote have just zeroed out that line item, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited for those moments when we start having much more intentional conversations about how to price our products that supports the way that we're working now, that we don't have an office anymore, but like now we're going to say, okay, we are going to have some amount of like management of our workplace, right? That used to be the responsibility of a workplace experience manager, right? Well, okay, our workplace is now virtual, so who's doing that?
Right, love it. I love it, Tyler, and it's been great. I anticipated this conversation was going to be uplifting, and it just has been just that. So, Tyler, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I want to wish you all the best for the future. Obviously, we're going to be keeping in touch. And yeah, it's been great having you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be learning out loud with you here, Alex. I think that's the thing that I want to sign off with, is just to say that none of this is certain, right? None of this is already known, right? We're learning together, right? And I think those of us that are bold enough to say things out loud, right, are going to get a chance to be a part of the solution, part of the iteration forward, part of the next version, right? Because if you're not willing to be wrong, right, you're very rarely going to be correct. And I want to invite everyone to be trying and doing new things. And maybe you're just following along afterwards after we figured it out. That's great too, right? But I want to invite more of us to be out there on the front lines of what's going to be next of remote working and work in general.
Sounds good. And maybe we can have an update on this podcast sometime in the future when the next coming comes along. But for now, it's been great, Tyler. I'll speak to you again, I'm sure, very soon online. But yeah, all the best for the future.
Blessings. Talk to you soon.